Mira Solon walked through the wide halls of Argos Academy with her head slightly lowered, her dark hair hanging like a curtain between her and the rest of the world. The students streamed around her, loud voices echoing against the metal-lined walls. They laughed, joked, argued, and chatted about assignments, weekend plans, and who was dating whom. Mira heard all of it, but none of it truly reached her. She was always somewhere else, somewhere quieter. Somewhere inside her mind, to most people at the academy, Mira was the strange girl who scribbled symbols and numbers on whatever surface she found, even her sleeves. She muttered equations as she walked. She stared too long at glowing consoles. Sometimes she forgot to speak, and sometimes she spoke far too quickly, like her thoughts were trying to escape her all at once. Her classmates did not understand her, and because they did not understand her, they created their own stories. She talks to herself. Weird. I bet she sleeps in the library. Did you see her notebook? It looks like an alien wrote in it. Mira never reacted. Whether she truly didn't hear or simply didn't care, no one could say. But she kept walking. Quiet steps carrying her toward her next class. Argos Academy was the pride of the United Earth Fleet, its training ground for the best pilots. Engineers, officers, and strategists humanity hoped to send into the stars. Its silver towers reached high above the sky of the Academy's home moon, its windows reflecting silver light from distant planetary rings. Students came from every part of human space to study here. They competed, they trained, and they dreamed of seeing the galaxy. Mira, however, dreamed of something else. Inside the tactical theory classroom, she sat alone at the corner desk. No one wanted to sit next to her, mostly because they feared she would start writing her strange patterns again. Today she had already filled half her digital slate with interlocking shapes, triangles, spirals, and branching lines that connected like growing roots, while the instructor explained the basics of enemy movement prediction. Mira barely looked up. Her hand moved quickly, drawing lines that looked nothing like the examples on the board. But if someone had been able to decipher those shapes, they might have noticed something familiar, something that appeared in classified emergency briefings and encrypted operation logs across human territories. It was the signature pattern of the Veil, of course. No one in this classroom knew that. The legend of the Veil floated like a ghost through military channels. A strategist so brilliant that entire wars shifted because of her plans. A figure who appeared only through encrypted transmissions. A name whispered by officers in distant star outposts. Credited with saving whole fleets with a single command, to them, the Veil was a myth, to Mira Solon. It was simply the other half of her life. The instructor continued his lecture. Walking back and forth near the glowing screen, "Now," he said, "who can tell me the most common mistake new tacticians make when analyzing enemy movement?" Hands rose across the classroom, eager, confident, competing. Mira did not raise hers. She already knew the answer, but she also knew something else. The instructor's explanation was missing two major variables, and she did not trust herself to explain them without confusing everyone. A student named Kale, loud and always ready to show off, answered. They guess too fast and don't gather enough data. The instructor nodded. Close. But the real problem is assuming the enemy thinks like we do. Human logic is not universal. Mira looked up for the first time, her eyes sharp for a moment. The instructor was right, but still incomplete. There were scenarios where an enemy did adopt human-style logic. Not intentionally, but as a consequence of exposure or adaptation. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. No one would listen or understand. Her desk vibrated softly. A silent alert flashed on her wrist device. She pressed her palm over it, hiding the message. Priority. Level 3. Cipher collective movement detected near perimeter zone 7. Response, recommendation. Requested. Myra blinked. Not here, not now. She kept her face expressionless, but her pulse sped up. The Cipher Collective was a network of machine-intelligent, fleets cold, precise, and deadly. Their ships moved in ways no human algorithm could fully predict. They were the reason Earth Command relied on the Veil in the first place. The instructor's voice faded into background noise. Mira tapped her desk, bringing up the Academy's standard simulation interface. The students around her assumed she was playing with another one of her strange calculations. In reality, she was already mapping the new cipher formation in her head. There were 3 possible routes they could be taking. 1. Led toward a trade convoy. 1 led toward a remote research station, and 1 her chest tightened led toward Argos territory. Her fingers moved faster. She needed to send her recommendation to command, but she had to do it without anyone noticing. The Academy was not supposed to know that a real threat was near. Students were not trained for panic. The instructor called her name, Miss Solon. She froze. Every student turned to look at her. The instructor tapped the board. Would you care to explain why your simulation is running an entirely different program from the rest of the class? Mira opened her mouth, but no words came out. A few students laughed quietly. Probably another one of her weird patterns, someone whispered. Mira lowered her eyes. Sorry, sir. I was checking something. The instructor sighed. Please follow along with the lesson. She nodded, shrinking into her seat. Her fingers trembled, not because she feared scolding, but because minutes mattered. She had to finish her recommendation. When the class ended, the room emptied quickly. Mira stayed behind, pretending to organize her things until everyone left. Only then did she open the encrypted transmission again. Her answer formed clearly in her mind. Recommended action. Shift patrol vector 14 by -6 degrees. Prepare intercept net at TRI point. 9. Expect feint. Secondary fleet likely hiding behind decoy. Formation. She sent it. The message vanished from her screen the moment it left. Her shoulders relaxed, but only slightly. There was never relief with the cipher, collective-only temporary pauses. Outside the classroom window, a shuttle flew past, leaving a streak of glowing trails across the sky. Students pointed at it, chatting excitedly. To them, it was just another training ship. Mira knew better. That was a messenger craft. A fast one. Someone from command was here. She walked down the corridor. Passing groups of students gathered around snack dispensers and study tables. She heard their laughter, their easy conversations, and sometimes the soft sting of mocking comments about her, but she kept moving, heading for the library. It was the one place she could think. Inside, tall shelves of glowing digital archives rose like quiet giants. Mira slipped into a corner where a small desk faced a view of the Academy courtyard. Here, silence wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She opened a blank notebook on her desk. Instead of lines or grids, the page displayed a white space ready to be filled with her patterns. She let her fingers move freely, drawing shapes that curved like orbits and branched like tree roots. These patterns were her language, her way of understanding the universe. Most students saw chaos, but Mira saw systems, movements, possibilities. After several minutes, she paused. A shadow fell across her desk. She looked up. An older man in a dark fleet uniform stood there, his eyes sharp and assessing. His rank was too high for anyone normally visiting a school. Cadet Solon, he said quietly. Mira swallowed. Yes, Commander, we received your recommendation. His voice held no emotion, but his words carried weight. The fleet will act on it immediately. Mira nodded once. The commander lowered his voice even further. There are concerns that the Cipher Collective has identified fragments of your tactical signature. We must be cautious. Your presence at the Academy may not be as hidden as we hoped. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. I can adjust my patterns. Hide them better. You're already hiding too much, he said. Your classmates believe you are simply ... odd, but if the Collective finds you, this Academy could become a target. We will continue observing the situation. Stay alert. He left as silently as he arrived. Mira sat alone in the library for a long time. Outside, students laughed in the courtyard. They threw flight discs, chased each other, and enjoyed their peaceful day. They had no idea how close danger might be, and Mira had no idea how much longer she could keep her 2 worlds apart. For now, She remained the Academy's strange, quiet girl, but across human space. She was still the Velve, unseen strategist who shaped battles and saved lives. And somewhere in the dark, the Sci-Fi Collective was moving. Mira pressed her fingers to her wrist device. This was only the beginning, Mira. Solon walked across the Academy courtyard the next morning with the same quiet steps. But inside, she felt a heavy weight pressing down on her. The Sci-Fi Collective was moving closer. The commander's warning echoed in her mind again and again. Something was shifting out there in the far regions of space. Something too deliberate to be coincidence. She tried to look calm, but her fingers kept tapping the side of her leg. Drawing invisible patterns only she could understand, her classmates passed her without a second glance. Some whispered, some smirked, and some barely noticed her at all. She was still the strange girl, the one who avoided conversation and lived in her own world. No one suspected that while they slept peacefully, she had stayed awake half the night, studying encrypted updates from Earth's command. The Sci-Fi Collective's fleets were behaving differently. Their movements were sharper, more coordinated. It reminded her of a hunter who finally caught the scent of its prey. She reached her strategy class just as the bell sounded. Inside the room, students took their seats, chatting about an upcoming simulation exam. Mira took her usual place in the corner. She tried to focus on her screen, but her eyes kept drifting to the window, where distant training ships glided through the morning sky. The world looked peaceful. Too peaceful. The instructor entered, tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that scanned the room. Today, he began, we continue studying tactical responses to enemy feint strategies. Mira lifted her stylus, intending to take notes, but her wrist device vibrated softly. Another encrypted alert. She froze. Her heartbeat quickened. She glanced around, no one noticed. Slowly, she lowered her hand beneath the desk and opened the message. Movement confirmed. Cipher Scout drones. Detected in outer ring, seeking entry vector, request analysis. Mira inhaled slowly. They were closer now. Much closer than they should have been. She raised her stylus again and pretended to follow the lesson. But under the desk, her other hand drew quick shapes in the air. Spiral, branch, pivot. She traced the routes the cipher drones could take. 3 of them were decoys. Only one was real. She could see it clearly, like watching a path shining in darkness. She leaned back slightly. Eyes half focused on the instructor, but mind racing elsewhere. The drones were heading toward a key relay station. If they cut communications there, the entire sector around Argo's academy would be left blind. She needed to respond. But how long could she keep doing this without someone noticing? The instructor suddenly called her name. Miss Solon. Ira jerked upright. Yes, sir. Explain what happens when you commit all defensive forces to the enemy's apparent first wave. She blinked. She hadn't heard the question, but she knew the answer anyway. You lose, she said quietly. A few students snickered. The instructor raised an eyebrow. Would you care to expand on that? Mira hesitated, then spoke. If you commit everything to the first wave, you have no answer for the second one. If the enemy is smart, the second one is the real attack. The instructor stared at her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Correct. Surprisingly concise. Though I would have preferred more explanation. Students turned and gave her strange looks. Mira sank back into her seat. She didn't want attention. She didn't want anyone to think about her too much, because attention was dangerous. The class continued. But Mira barely heard any of it. When the bell finally rang, she was the first to leave the room. She rushed through the hallway, ignoring curious glances, until she reached the small maintenance stairwell that almost no one used. Inside the narrow space, she crouched near the wall and opened her wrist device again. She typed quickly. Recommendation. Shift defense grid. Place interception team at relay station gate angle. 3. Prepare counter-drone wave. Her finger hovered over the send button. Then she stopped. Her chest tightened. Her breath caught. For the first time, fear whispered in her mind. Not fear for herself, but fear for the academy. If the Sci-Fi Collective really traced her tactical signature, then everyone here could be in danger. She pressed send. The message vanished. Mira stayed in the stairwell for a long moment, hugging her knees, trying to calm her racing heartbeat. She knew she had done the right thing. But every transmission she sent brought the Cipher Collective closer. Later. During lunch break, Mira sat alone under a tree in the courtyard, her food tray untouched. Students laughed all around her, excited about upcoming games, exams, and weekend trips. She watched them with quiet envy. They lived simple lives here, safe lives. They worried about grades and friendships. Mira worried about whether machine fleets would burn the sky tomorrow. She looked down at her hands. They were small, pale, trembling slightly. What would her classmates think if they knew? If they discovered that the girl they whispered about was secretly one of the most heavily protected assets in the United Earth Fleet? If they realized that hundreds of soldiers followed plans she made in quiet corners like this? Probably nothing good. She closed her eyes. A shadow fell across her. "Hey," a voice said. Mira's eyes snapped open. A girl stood in front of Heralia, one of the top pilots in training. Confident, popular, always smiling. Right now, she wasn't smiling. "Are you okay?" Aaliyah asked. Mira blinked. "I'm fine." Her voice sounded thin, even to her. "You didn't eat anything. I'm not hungry." Aaliyah hesitated, then sat down beside her. Myra stiffened. She wasn't used to people sitting this close. She wasn't used to people noticing her at all. "You look tired," Aaliyah said softly. "I didn't sleep much," Mira admitted. "Studying?" "Something like that." Aaliyah leaned back on her hands, watching the sky. She spoke casually, but there was concern behind her words. "If you ever need help, you know. You could ask someone. You don't always have to be alone." She didn't know how to explain that she wasn't alone by choice. She was alone because it was safer that way. For everyone. Before she could say anything, sharp alarm echoed through the courtyard. Students froze. Mira jumped to her feet. It was not a drill alarm. Mira knew every tone used by the Academy systems, and this one was different, shorter, harsher, urgent. A voice boomed through the speakers. "All cadets return to your buildings immediately. This is a Level 2 alert. Repeat, Level 2 alert." Panic rippled across the courtyard. Aaliyah grabbed Mira's arm. "What's happening?" Myra's heart pounded. She couldn't say the truth, but she had a terrible idea what it might be. Someone must have spotted something near the outer training perimeter. Something they didn't understand. "Come on," Aaliyah said. "Let's get inside." Mira let herself be pulled forward. Students rushed toward the buildings, crowding the doors. She heard scattered voices, fear, confusion, denial. Is it pirates? Maybe a malfunction? It's probably just a drill. But Mira knew better. She felt it deep inside her bones, inside the building. Instructors hurried through the halls, guiding students toward safe rooms. Mira and Aaliyah were pushed along with the rest. Everyone tried to message their families, but the network lagged from overload. Mira kept her gaze low, trying not to show the fear rising inside her. If the Academy had activated a Level 2 alert, it meant something was close. To close. Suddenly, her wrist device buzzed again. A private code. A code meant only for the Veil. She pressed her hand over it. Shielding the screen. Greater than urgent. Identified unknown signal. Near Argos sector. Possible cipher probe. Request tactical input. Immediately, her breath caught. They were here. She glanced at the crowd of students around her. They were scared, confused, but still safe. For now, she typed quickly. Greater than route. Drone countermeasures to north vector. Set decoy. Signals. Do not engage directly. She waited for the confirmation, but none came. The signal cut. Out. Her wrist device went silent. Mira stared at it with wide eyes. The communication channel had never cut out on her before. Not once. Aaliyah looked at her. "Mira, are you okay? You look pale." Mira opened her mouth, then closed it again. No explanation she could give would make sense. She simply whispered, "Something is wrong." Before Aaliyah could respond, a deep tremor shook the building. Students screamed, lights flickered, and in that moment, Myra knew the truth. The Sci-Fi Collective had found something. Maybe it wasn't her. Maybe it was just the Academy. But deep down, she feared the worst. The walls vibrated again as another rumble passed through the structure. Myra's heart thudded painfully as she realized what had happened. The machines had arrived, and the Academy was not ready. The floor shook again, dust drifting from the ceiling as the lights flickered. Students pushed against each other in panic, trying to stay balanced as the Academy trembled a third time. Mira felt her chest tighten with fear, but her mind stayed sharp. She knew what this meant. She had seen the patterns many times before in distant battle reports. Probe strike. The Sci-Fi Collective was testing the Academy's defenses. Her classmates didn't know that. To them, it was just chaos. Some cried, some shouted, some clung to their friends. No one had ever expected the Academy, the safest place in the sector, to face a real threat. Mira, stay close. Aaliyah grabbed her wrist as another. Vibration shook the hall. Students hurried toward the reinforced rooms designed to protect them during emergencies. Instructors shouted orders, trying to sound calm even though their voices cracked. Move quickly. Stay with your class. Do not run ahead. Mira let Aaliyah pull her, but her eyes were focused on the ceiling, tracing the tremors with her mind. These hits were too precise. The machines were tapping specific points of the Academy's shield, learning how it responded. This was not random. This was not an accident. They were searching, and Ira feared they knew exactly what they were searching for. A sharp cracking sound echoed from somewhere above, like metal tearing. Students screamed, ducking instinctively. Mira pulled Aaliyah, dared downward, as a small piece of ceiling panel dropped and shattered on the floor. We need to get inside the safe room. Aaliyah yelled. They pushed into the room with several other students. The thick metal door slid shut behind them. Inside, the walls glowed faint blue with shield reinforcements. Everyone crowded together, whispering nervously. But Myra did not sit. She stood near the corner, her wrist device hidden under her sleeve. She pressed the side panel, trying to reconnect to the encrypted channel. No signal. The Sci-Fi Collective
Doors
was jamming communications. Her heartbeat thudded painfully. She tried again. Still nothing. The machines had learned from previous conflicts. They knew how to cut off her messages. They knew how she communicated. They were adapting, and that meant they were closer than she imagined. Across the room, students huddled together, exchanging frightened guesses. Do you think it's pirates? No way. Pirates can't hit a place like this. Then what is it? Mira swallowed hard. She wanted to tell them to stay calm. She wanted to explain something, anything that would help. But she couldn't. Even if she tried, they wouldn't believe her. A heavy boom shook the room, sliding everyone a few inches across the floor. Mira steadied herself by pressing a hand against the wall. Aaliyah stumbled toward her. This is bad, Aaliyah whispered. Really bad. Mira nodded. Another vibration followed, smaller this time, almost like a pulse. A scanning wave. Mira's breath caught. The machines were sweeping the area. Looking for her, she sank to her knees and pressed her palm against the floor, tracing the rhythm of the pulses. They followed a pattern: slow, fast, slow, slow, fast. She had seen it before in tactical reports at Cipher. Search mode. They weren't testing the Academy's strength. They were tracking a signal. Her signal. Aaliyah knelt beside her. Mira, are you hurt? No, Mira whispered, barely able to speak. I think the danger is here because of me. Leah stared at her as if she hadn't heard correctly. What? That doesn't make any sense? And it didn't, not unless she explained everything. But how could she? How could she suddenly reveal that she wasn't just a student, but the strategist the machines considered their greatest threat? How could she tell Aaliyah that the Sci-Fi Collective had been hunting her for months? Before she could answer, the room lights dimmed to emergency red. A voice came through the speakers. The Academy director himself. All students and staff remain in your safe rooms. Do not attempt to leave. Defense teams are engaging an unidentified threat. His voice trembled at the end. The machines must have broken through one of the outer defenses. Students gasped and clung to each other. Mira forced herself to think clearly. If the machines got inside the academy, they would not attack randomly. They would move with precision, heading toward areas with the highest probability of finding her. She needed to figure out their path. She closed her eyes and mentally mapped the academy halls. Levels, shield nodes, communication rooms. She drew the paths the machines would take. The angles they would consider efficient. She saw it. They would head for the central data hub. Her encrypted transmissions passed through that hub. If they accessed it, they could confirm her identity. Her breath quickened. She had to do something. She stood up suddenly. Aaliyah grabbed her arm. "Where are you going?" "I have to leave," Mira said, voice shaking. "What?" "No, Mira. Are you crazy? It's dangerous out there." But Mira pulled away. "If I stay here, everyone is in danger." The students nearby stared at her like she had lost her mind. Aaliyah stepped in front of her, blocking the door. "You're not making sense. You're safe here." "Safe?" The word made Mira's stomach twist. She pointed at the ceiling. "They're scanning. They're looking for something specific." Aaliyah frowned. "How do you know?" Mira hesitated. For the first time in her life, she considered revealing the truth. But before she could speak, the entire building shook violently. The lights went out. Screams filled the room. Emergency panels lit up. The walls with a dim glow. Aaliyah grabbed Myra's hand instinctively. "Don't let go," she said. Myra nodded, but she wasn't looking at Aaliyah. She was staring at the door. A new sound echoed beyond its sharp tapping, like metal fingers striking the hallway floor. The cipher drones, her classmates, panicked, backing away from the door. Some fell to the ground, covering their heads. Aaliyah whispered, "What is that?" Myra didn't answer. A metallic scraping sound ran along the hallway outside, slow and deliberate. The drones were mapping the room locations, scanning for energy signatures, analyzing heartbeats. Searching, Mira stepped back, squeezing her eyes shut. Her mind raced through strategies. If she stayed in the room, the machines would detect her. If she left, she had a chance to redirect them. She took a deep breath. She knew what she had to do. She turned to Aaliyah. "Don't follow me." Aaliyah grabbed her shoulders. "Are you insane? The drones are out there." "I know." Mira pulled away. "But I'm the one they want." Aaliyah froze. For a moment, the two girls stared at each other. Aaliyah's lips trembled. "What are you talking about?" Mira opened her mouth. The truth pushed at her throat, but she had no time. The door lock made a sharp clicking sound. Someone or something was overriding it. Students screamed and dove behind the benches. Mira's heart pounded as she looked at the emergency hatch on the side wall and escape. "Panel only used by staff?" She ran toward it. "Mira?" Aaliyah called, reaching out. But Mira opened the hatch and slipped into the narrow maintenance tunnel. The door behind her slammed shut. The tunnel was dark and cramped. Pipes lined the ceiling, dripping condensation. The sounds of screams and metal echoed faintly behind her. She crawled forward, breathing hard. Her hands shook as she moved, but she forced herself to keep going. The tunnel led to the central corridor, close to the data hub. When she reached the end of the tunnel, she pushed open the grate and slipped into the hallway. It was dimly lit and completely empty, but not silent. Faint humming echoed down the hall. Mira pressed her back against the wall and peeked around the corner. A cipher drone hovered near the data hub door. It was small, sleek, and made of black metal. Its single red eye pulsed with light as it scanned the control panel. Mira's breath caught. It was trying to break in. She had to act, but how? She wasn't a soldier. She had never held a weapon. She only had her mind. She stepped forward slowly, quietly. The drone clicked suddenly. Turning its red eye toward her, Mira froze. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the drone shot toward her. She bolted down the hallway, her shoes slamming against the metal floor. The drone's mechanical whir grew louder as it chased her. She rounded a corner and dove behind a support pillar. The drone zipped past, scanning wildly. Her breath came in sharp gasps, but her mind stayed focused. She knew the academy's layout. She knew the blind spots in the drone's field of vision. She waited when the drone paused. Confused, she sprinted toward the emergency control panel and slammed her hand onto the override. A blast door slammed down between her and the drone. The drone rammed the door once, twice, 3 times, but it held. Mira slid to the floor, trembling. Her heart felt like it might burst. She knew this wouldn't stop the machines for long, but it bought her time. She stood up slowly and looked toward the data hub. She had to protect it. If the machines got inside, her life and everyone else's would change forever. She took a deep breath and walked toward the door. This time, she wasn't the veil sending silent messages. This time, she was standing on the battlefield herself. The cipher attack changed everything at the academy. Life did not return to normal, even though the instructors tried their best to pretend it did. Students walked through the halls a little slower. They talked in quieter voices, and they watched the sky more often, as if expecting another wave of machines to drop from the clouds. Mira Solon noticed all of this, but she said nothing. She only moved through the days with her usual quiet steps, blending into the background as she always did. But inside her mind, things were far from calm. She spent every night thinking, calculating, and mapping out future possibilities. The Cipher Collective had found her once. They could try again, and she knew they were not finished. Her classmates also did not look at her the same way anymore. Some stared in awe, others in confusion, and a few in fear. They had seen her during the attack. They had watched the weird girl, the strange quiet one who always sat alone, suddenly become their guide, their protector, and their strategist. It was something they could not forget. Even though Mira kept her head down, she could feel their eyes following her everywhere she went. One morning, during tactical class, the instructor called her name. Cadet Solon, would you demonstrate your method for predicting enemy movement? He asked. As every student turned toward her. Myra froze. Her fingers curled against the desk, and she stared down at the floor. She wanted to say no. She wanted to disappear into the seat and leave the class without anyone noticing. But she also knew the instructor was not really giving her a choice. Reluctantly, she stood up and walked to the front. She picked up a marker with a trembling hand and looked at the blank tactical board. The room held its breath. Mira started drawing shapes. At first, they seemed random, like a mess of lines and loops. Some students frowned, but slowly, the pattern began to make sense. She showed how a Messian-based enemy calculated probability routes. She drew arrows that twisted in unnatural curves, predicting how cipher units would change direction when reacting to human unpredictability. Her voice was soft, but clear. They do not adapt emotionally, she explained. They adapt logically. When the logic breaks, they hesitate, and hesitation creates openings. The instructor watched her with fascination. The students watched her with awe. When she finished, the room was silent. Mira quickly returned to her seat and stared down at her notebook. Her ears were burning with embarrassment. No one whispered about her being weird that day. They only whispered about how incredible she was. After class, 2 cadets approached her. It was rare for anyone to walk up to her voluntarily. Mira tensed, unsure of what they wanted. One of them, a tall boy named Ren, scratched the back of his neck awkwardly. "Hey! Thanks again for saving us during the attack," he said. The other cadet, a girl named Lyra, nodded. "Yeah, we owe you a lot." Mira blinked several times. She did not know what to say. She wanted to tell them it was nothing. She wanted to retreat back into her quiet bubble. But they were looking at her with genuine gratitude, not fear or mockery. So she simply replied, "You're welcome." It was short, but for her it was a big step. The days continued like this. More cadets began greeting her softly in the halls. Some asked her small questions about classwork. Others left her alone, but smiled politely as they passed. Mira struggled to understand these sudden changes. It felt strange, but also comforting in a way she was not used to. But while her school life shifted, the outside galaxy grew darker. Late one night, as Mira sat in her room reviewing star system maps, her communicator blinked with a secure message. She hesitated before opening it. The emblem of Earth Command appeared. The Cipher Collective has deployed a new node, the message read. Designation: Prime Logic Nexus. Estimated threat level: catastrophic. Requesting immediate strategic review from the Veil. Mira closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped. She had hoped for more time before being pulled into another conflict. But she knew the enemy was growing faster than expected. She opened the file attached to the message. What she saw made her stomach twist. The Prime Logic Nexus was a superintelligence core that could compute millions of scenarios per second. If it deployed fully, it could wipe out human fleets before they even knew they were in danger. Mira stared at the data, her mind racing. She tried to find a weakness. But the more she analyzed it, the more she realized that traditional tactics would fail. Machines were getting smarter, but humans could still be unpredictable. Mira stood up and paced her room. She muttered calculations under her breath, scribbled on papers, and tore them up. Hours passed. Her lamp flickered. Her hands shook from exhaustion. Finally, she paused. A small, strange idea formed in her mind. It was risky, untested, and illogical, but maybe that was why it could work. Before she could explore the idea further, her door chimed. She froze. No one visited her room. Slowly, she approached the door and opened it a crack. To her surprise, Ren and Lyra stood outside. Ren looked worried. "Mira, are you okay? You left class early, and you didn't show up to dinner? We thought something happened." Lyra nodded. "We saw your light on. Can we come in?" Mira panicked internally. Her room was covered in maps, scattered notes, and tactical symbols. She did not want anyone to see this, but she also saw the genuine concern in their eyes. After a long hesitation, she stepped aside. Ren and Lyra entered and immediately froze. The room looked like a war room, not a student dorm. Charts covered the walls. Data screens glowed with cipher information. Papers covered the bed. Ren whispered, "Wow." Lyra turned to Myra. "You're working on something big, aren't you?" Mira lowered her head. "Yes. Is it the cipher?" Ren asked. She nodded again. The two cadets exchanged glances. They were nervous, but also curious. Lyra stepped closer. "Can we help?" Myra's head shot up in surprise. Nobody had ever asked to help her before, not with something like this. She looked at them for a long moment. She could say no. She could push them away, keep her secrets, and continue working alone. But something inside her shifted. Maybe this time, she did not have to fight alone. She slowly nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I think I have a plan. But it is strange and dangerous." Ren grinned nervously. "Well, everything you do is strange, but it works." Lyra smiled. "Show us." For the first time, Mira shared her ideas with others. She explained how the Prime Logic Nexus used perfect logic to predict movement. She explained how humans could break that logic by acting in ways no algorithm could model. Randomized movement, emotional decisions, chaotic timing. Ren blinked. "So, you want us to act like unpredictable idiots?" "Yes," Myra replied seriously. Lyra laughed. "I think we can do that. I spent hours planning together." Mira worked faster and more confidently with them by her side. She spoke more freely. Her mind lit up with new possibilities. They offered simple ideas that sparked bigger strategies in her head. For the first time in her life, Mira realized she did not have to carry everything alone. When morning came, they all stood back and looked at the final plan. It was wild, it was illogical, it should not work. But Mira felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Ren crossed his arms. "So, when do we tell the instructors?" Mira shook her head. "We don't. Not yet. I need to test something first." Lyra frowned. "Test what?" Mira looked at her with calm. determination. Whether humanity can beat the machines by being exactly what we are unpredictable. Plan was ready, and the next stage of the war was about to begin. The sun had not yet risen, but Myra Solon was already awake. She stood by the window of her room, staring at the dim horizon where the academy buildings cast long shadows over the grounds. Her mind was already deep in calculations, running simulations that no normal student could ever understand. Today was the day. She would put her plan into motion. The prime logic nexus was preparing to activate in a distant star system. Once it came online, it would begin calculating millions of outcomes at once, eliminating every human strategy before fleets could even form. The galaxy would fall piece by piece. Unless Myra's plan worked. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. When she opened it, Ren and Lyra stood outside, both looking tired but determined. "Did you sleep at all?" Ren asked. Myra shook her head. "Not much. You?" "Barely," Lyra said with a small smile. "But we're here." "Ready to help?" Myra stepped aside to let them in. Her room was cleaner now, the charts organized and the strategy map ready for activation. A bright holographic display floated over her desk, showing the prime logic nexus's location. Myra pointed at the center of the projection. "This is where it will activate. The human fleet will arrive too late if we don't act first. Our plan depends on sending a false signal to trick the nexus into calculating impossible patterns." Ren stared at the display. "Right, the part where we confuse a super-intelligent machine by being completely unpredictable idiots." Myra blinked. "Not idiots. Just human." Lyra laughed softly. "Same thing sometimes. They prepared the equipment they needed. Transmitters, signal disruptors, and a small craft hidden under the academy hangar. If anyone questioned them, Myra would give clearance codes that only the Veil should know." Ren and Lyra still struggled to fully understand that part as they walked through the quiet hallway. Ren finally asked, "Myra, how long have you been the Veil?" Myra hesitated. "Since I was 13. Earth Command found me after I broke their simulation system. They said my mind worked differently. They needed someone who could see possibilities others could not." Lyra stared. 13. That's so young," Myra nodded. "I didn't understand it then. I still don't sometimes." They reached the hangar. The small stealth craft waited in the shadows. Myra entered first, powering up the controls. Ren and Lyra strapped in behind her. "You sure this thing won't blow up?" Ren asked. 70% sure, Myra replied. Ren groaned. "Great. Perfect. Love that number." The craft lifted off and exited the academy through a hidden airlock. Moments later, they were in the open sky, climbing toward the stars. Myra felt her heart racing, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. She had never brought anyone with her on a mission before, but this time was different. The plan needed more than calculations. It needed human unpredictability. Once they reached orbit, Myra activated the cloaking field. The stars stretched across the darkness like glittering dust. Ren stared out the window in awe. "I never thought I'd be doing this in the middle of school term," he said. Lyra nudged him. "Be grateful you're not doing math homework right now." Myra entered the coordinates. The small craft jumped into faster-than-light travel. The stars blurred into streaks as they sped across the galaxy. Hours passed before they reached the edge of the system where the prime logic nexus would activate. The space around them looked calm, but Myra felt the tension under the surface. She could sense the calculations already beginning. The nexus was awake. Myra quickly deployed the transmitters. Holographic projections filled the cockpit, showing countless cipher units surrounding the nexus like a metal storm. Ren's jaw dropped. "There are so many." "That is not the problem," Myra said quietly. "The problem is that they already know we are here," they returned sharply. "What?" "But we're cloaked. The nexus predicted we would come before we even left the academy." Myra took a deep breath. "That means we must move fast." Cipher drones began approaching the area, scanning the system. Myra activated the chaos algorithm they had, designed a pattern of irregular, Random signals generated by Ren and Lyra's clashing emotional inputs. Every laugh, every moment of frustration, every nervous tremble in their voices fed into the wave of unpredictable data. The transmitting device began to pulse. The cipher drones halted. They twitched. They reoriented. Then they twitched again, confused. Ren raised his hands. Is it working? Please tell me it's working. Myra stared at the data. The Nexus is recalculating. Again and again. It cannot understand the input. Lyra smiled. So, we're confusing one of the smartest machines in the galaxy by being nervous teenagers? Yes, Myra replied. But only for a moment. We need something stronger. She reached into the storage compartment and pulled out a small Neuralink device. She hesitated. Ren frowned. What is that? This will amplify the chaos pattern. But only if someone connects their mind to it. Myra looked away. My thoughts are too structured, too logical. The machine has studied me for years. It will predict me. Lyra realized what she was saying. So you need one of us. Myra nodded slowly. Only a mind that is completely unpredictable can overload the Nexus. Ren and Lyra looked at each other. Ren grinned nervously. Well, my mind is definitely unpredictable. Lyra smacked his arm. Mine is too? Myra held out the device. You do not have to do this. It is dangerous. Lyra placed her hand over Myra's. Myra, you saved us, and you're trying to save everyone. Let us help. Myra looked at her with soft eyes. She had never expected someone to say words like that to her. After a moment, Ren stepped forward. We'll both do it. Together, they connected the Neuralink. The device lit up instantly, reacting to the chaotic blend of two clashing human mind sphere. Hope, stress, humor, doubt, courage, everything at once. The signal expanded into a wild storm of emotion and unpredictability. The cipher drones buzzed erratically. The prime logic, Nexus twitched like a broken machine, and then it began to overload. Myra watched the holographic display as it flickered. Calculations jammed. Logic pathways collapsed. The Nexus tried to interpret chaos. But chaos had no pattern. A burst of light exploded from the core. Ren and Lyra gasped as the Neuralink overloaded. Myra ripped the device from their hands before it could burn them. The cockpit shook violently. When the light faded, the entire cipher formation froze. A silent second passed. Then all the machines powered down. Ren slumped back. Did we do it? Myra scanned the display. Slowly she nodded. The Nexus has collapsed. Without it, the Cipher Collective cannot coordinate. The war is over. Lyra wiped her eyes, overwhelmed. We actually won. Myra felt warmth spread through her chest. Not pride, though she felt some of that, but something deeper. She had not saved the galaxy alone. She had done it with friends. When they returned to the academy, the instructors and cadets were waiting outside the hangar. The moment Myra stepped out of the craft, people rushed toward her. They did not cheer loudly. They simply looked at her with respect, gratitude, and admiration. Ren whispered, "Looks like you're not invisible anymore." Lyra smiled softly. "They finally see you, Myra, the real you." Myra did not know how to respond. But she felt something change inside her. For years, she had carried the weight of the galaxy alone. She had believed she had to be the veil, the myth, the ghost. Now she knew she could be Myra Solon too. Her classmates approached her slowly. One girl stepped forward and said, "Thank you for everything." Yes. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. Myra looked at them, her voice quiet but steady. "I didn't do it alone. Ren and Lyra helped. We all can help each other. That is why humans win. Not because we are perfect, but because we are together." For the first time in her life, Myra felt like she belonged. The war was over. The veil had lifted, and the girl once called a myth was finally seen, not as a legend, but as a human being.